couple of years ago, amidst the huge crypto bull market where prices of basically everything absolutely mooned, a new narrative was being popularised: crypto games. With the monumental success of NFTs at the time, the idea of implementing crypto-related tech into games seemed like an interesting concept. The story we were told went something like this: hey, what about instead of just buying a Fortnite skin and having it locked to your account so you immediately lose money, you could buy an NFT of it, which would let you use it in the game and you can trade it and maybe even make some money if the skin goes up in value. The idea on paper was pretty similar to the massive multi-billion-dollar CS2 economy, where skins can be traded peer-to-peer between players for actual money. This is part of the reason why so many players are willing to spend thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on skins within that game. Many of them increase in value over time, making the game not only an esport, but also an investment opportunity for many. It's no surprise that given the incredible success of the CS economy, a ton of other game devs wanted to recreate the exact same conditions, which allowed for such a thriving marketplace to exist, and it seemed like NFTs might just be the way forwards. And it wasn't just crypto bros pushing this narrative at the time. I mean, the stuff was everywhere. There was NFT this, NFT that, McDonald's doing an NFT, oh, this clothes company's doing an NFT, there's a multiverse here, there's a multiverse there. You'd almost think that the media were being paid to report on it with how much coverage this stuff was getting. You'd almost think. Anyway, even Supercell, the game studio I love to hate, tried getting in on the action. Taking a look at their investment portfolio shows that they've invested in a handful of crypto game developers over the years. People really thought this could be the next big thing. Anyway, fast forward to 2024, and I think it's safe to say the whole NFT multiverse crypto gaming narrative has completely collapsed. No one who plays games cares even remotely about crypto, especially within the game itself, and even the rare occasional success story has since fallen into obscurity. So where did it all go wrong, and why do gamers not care about crypto? Do these people just hate free money? Well, let's take a look at a few prominent examples of crypto games and try to work out where it all went wrong. Firstly, we need to look at Axie Infinity. This was the dog's bollocks of crypto gaming a few years ago. Heralded as the poster boy of crypto gaming, Axie Infinity was being reported as being not only a brilliant game, but also a good way of making money while playing. I mean, it sounds too good to be true, right? Right? Firstly, there's the game itself. Axie Infinity is basically a crappy 2D card game where you use your Axies, which are like auto-generated Pokemon blob things, to fight other things. One of their claims is, oh, all of the Axies are unique. I mean, take a look at these three. Apparently they're completely unique. The reality is that there's just very minor attributes, and there's 6 or 7 different things that change, so technically they're all unique, but I mean, the reality of the situation is they're just auto-generated NFTs in the same way that the Bored Apes are. You know, we'll get onto that later. Anyway, yeah, Axie Infinity is basically about taking these auto-generated blob things and fighting with other blobs. That's the main part of the game. It's all about collecting a load of them over time and becoming stronger as you progress. And there's also a land element as well, which we'll get onto in a sec. The game first came out in 2018 and was made by only 3 developers. As I say, the idea was basically Pokemon plus crypto. The game was also inspired by another crypto game which had seen some success, called CryptoKitties.
Today I'm going to teach you how to play CryptoKitties. Let's call it Alan. I'm going to give Alan a like.
They wanted to make CryptoKitties but take it a step further. Axie Infinity was one of the first crypto games to actually pick up some kind of traction, but I think in hindsight it's safe to say it wasn't really for the thrilling gameplay part of it. Despite this, at its peak, the game was reported to have up to 800,000 daily active users, which is insane. But here's the kicker, when the game had some kind of actual user base, it wasn't exactly cheap to play. Let's start with the Axies, those little Pokemon cat fellas. To play the game at bare minimum, you need 3 of them, which you get off the marketplace. You buy them from other players, basically. When the value of pretty much all cryptocurrencies went to the moon in and around 2021, especially Axie Infinity's main token, AXS, which went up to about $130 off the top of my head, the value of the absolute worst Axies was hovering at around $400 as a result. So you would have needed to spend at least $1,200 just to play the game in the first place, and that would also give you an incredibly underwhelming set. The developers, Sky Mavis, take a cut from each marketplace transaction, which is a big part of how they make their money. During the game's peak, they were reportedly making over $200 million per week. To put that into perspective, Supercell's newest game, with over 10 million downloads at this point, Squad Busters, made 24 mil in its first month, and that's obviously with a whole lot more players. But then again, Squad Busters doesn't cost $1,200 to play. On top of that, if you want to actually do many of the core features of the game, you're going to have to stump up even more crypto to do so. So as an Axie Infinity player, you'll want to be collecting, breeding, fighting, upgrading, and building stuff. These were the main core elements of the game at the time. Collecting Axies costs money. After the game fell off, they did make some free ones, but they're terrible, so you're still left in a situation where you're buying these Axies. Breeding Axies also costs money, at one point around $60. Upgrading Axies costs money, and building stuff, well, that costs a lot of money. Now, even though the game is completely dead, the cheapest plot of land will still set you back $270. All I know is that at the game's peak, these land tiles at minimum were costing around $3,000.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass on.
Which is just wild. I mean, that's the same price as 10 Nintendo Switches or 6 PS5s or this gaming PC or this car. For a square of land on a game which people only play to make money. But hey, I mean, virtual real estate is the next big thing, guys, right? I mean, off the top of my head, I think, was it Snoop Dogg? I think Snoop Dogg bought he bought like a virtual plot of land in some other like stupid crypto metaverse thing. And then someone paid like $500,000 to be Snoop Dogg's next door neighbor. Not in real life, just in the fucking metaverse thing. It baffles me. The idea is, it's like scarce and everything, and there's not much of this land going around. But at the end of the day, the scarcity is within that single metaverse. But there's definitely not a scarcity on metaverses themselves. It's the same as NFTs. Oh, there's only 10,000 of this NFT. But there's also like 100,000 different sets of NFTs. So when you look at the entire market, it's not really that scarce. So, moving on to the making money part of Axie Infinity. The making money part of this whole situation comes from player rewards, which are paid out in a separate token called SLP or Smooth Love Potion. One SLP at the moment is worth $0.002, by the way, which is down almost 99% from where it used to be. At one point in time, people who were grinding the game out big time were actually making good money. There were even reports that some players were making a few $100s per month. That doesn't sound like a lot given how many hours you needed to play the game to manage this, but this made the game very popular in poorer countries like Venezuela, where this constituted a good salary. Unfortunately, the dramatic rise of Axie Infinity came just as quickly as it went. As the price of both of the game's tokens crashed, the player base dried up. It turns out the only reason people were playing the game was basically as a job. Who'da thunk it? Oh, and a big part of the game's collapse being so fast was also because some hackers managed to pull $600 million out of the game. They basically snagged it through a code vulnerability, and the developers had to pay everyone out who was affected. But before long, I mean, the damage had already been done. Like everything related to that game just crashed overnight after that. Ultimately, Axie Infinity's failure was down to the game being so hugely dependent on the crypto side of things, as opposed to the game/fun side. This quickly created an unsustainable tulip mania type bubble, which led to a very nasty crash, eliminating a majority of players from the game. I don't think it's fair to say that the developers deliberately intended to make a Ponzi scheme, but the economics of the game at its peak certainly pointed in the direction of a Ponzi-like system. The only way the game was able to sustain appreciating values in Axies and good money for the players was from constantly bringing in new players, thus increasing the demand of everything in the game's economy. Now, I'm not an economist, so this next section is courtesy of Mihai Geza, who does understand it. Credit to The Verge for interviewing them too. He basically explains that players use Axies to produce SLP, and then the SLP would be used to produce more Axies, and then these Axies would bring in even more SLP producing players into the game, which is a way of creating a lot of inflation. So the core way of making money from the prohibitively expensive game is paid out in a token which is under constant inflation. What could possibly go wrong? Even if you discount the $600 million hack, the game wasn't going to sustain the ridiculous valuations of its assets for long. So as it stands, AXS and SLP tokens are both down over 95% from their peak. There are some remaining players, but likely only due to the sunk cost fallacy, as in they're already a ton of money in the hole, so they may as well just keep playing. It's the same as if you buy a car, spend thousands to fix it, and it's still broken. You sort of just have to keep going since you're in it for so much money already. Interestingly, it seems that the developers are starting to mature and are actually trying to expand their games catalogue and make games which don't have Ponzi-nomics. How that turns out, we'll have to wait and see, but I am genuinely wishing them the best. It seems like they might actually have some talent on board, and I'm not, wishing for their downfall just because they're adjacent to crypto and, they're doing crypto-related things. I don't hate them because they're attached to crypto. It was just that they created the perfect environment for this massive bubble to happen, and then lots of people got burnt. The thing that frustrates me is there were a lot of people from poorer countries, for example, the Philippines, who saw this as basically a really good business opportunity. A lot of these individuals ended up taking out pretty high finance. When the average salary is, a couple $100s a month, the idea of putting down $1,200 as an investment within the game meant a lot of people were taking out, big loans, and they were dependent on the game paying out. And obviously, if you were a little bit too late into the Axie Infinity thing and you were buying towards the top and trying to do this as a business, and you go in pretty heavy on it, token crashes, you basically get rugged. Whether the devs knew that was going to happen or not is a different thing, but a lot of people got really, really wrecked. And we're not talking about the idea of a game costing $1,000, you might think, oh, it's really well-off people who are just playing a game for the rich. No, the opposite was actually the case. There were a few very rich people who were trying to speculate on it and buying all the land up, but a majority of the daily active users were from poor countries. So, these are pretty vulnerable people in the whole scheme of things in the global economy who got absolutely railed by this. Anyway, I think a lot of people will have learnt from the Axie Infinity bubble, and hopefully something like this won't happen again. But crypto goes up and down in 4-year cycles, yada yada. People constantly fall for bubbles time and time again. So I'm sure something very similar is going to happen again. 100%. Even when we can learn from history, someone will come up with some kind of game that everyone speculates on, everything goes up, everything's worth thousands of dollars in the game, and it turns out no one's actually playing the game and it's all a bit of a scam. It's going to be something similar is going to happen again. But